Okay, let's call this meeting to order of the Community Resources and Tourism Committee. Starting off, I'll call to order and roll call here. Looks like we're missing Supervisor Bjork. Has anybody heard from him? Maybe he's just fashionably late. So we'll see. Otherwise, everybody else is here either live and in person or virtually. So first order of business, approval of minutes from our January meeting.
I'll move to approve those minutes. I'll second
that. Any additional discussion about the minutes? If not, all in favor? That is passes. Do we have any public comments, either in person or anything that's been emailed in?
I do.
Oh.
Did you? I don't think you got this one, Michelle. No. Because I didn't, it was in my response to this email that came in through our contact us piece of our website, that I said that I would share it with you. And then I received a response from him thanking me for bringing it to you. So this is an email that was received on January 27th from Bob Retz, R-E-T-Z. And it's got his email address and phone number. Greetings. I realize that you have much more pressing items on your agenda. However, we here in the Hay River Township, Dunn County, Wisconsin, 54725, have a dilemma. We somehow got missed in the planning for high-speed internet. I'm sure it was just an oversight in the planning phase, but it affects approximately 30 residences. Charter Communications / Spectrum Division has been assigned to provide high-speed internet service from the FCC under the RODF program. The area, as relates to our specific needs, is in Dunn County, Wisconsin. It's approximately 4 miles of Dunn County Road N between Wisconsin Highway 79 and Dunn County Road F. Spectrum has been assigned south of that line. The area involved in our dilemma includes 4 dead-end roads that are north of that line: 304th Street, 330th Street, 350th Street, and 370th Street. LTD Broadband, I believe, has the area that would include those 4 streets. However, it would be totally impractical for them to service those 4 roads. They would have to come down and duplicate what Spectrum has already done, or they would have to come over some pretty rough ground, including hills and heavily wooded areas. I don't believe that it would be in their interest to do that. Spectrum would really be the only viable option to provide this service. I've been in contact with Spectrum about the dilemma. Mike Hill, a Charter, he's been very helpful, but Spectrum, it seems, would have to justify the extra cost. There may be extra grants or something to cover the cost, but I'm unable to access that information. This is where we need your help. I've pretty much exhausted all my avenues. Anything you may be able to do to help rectify this oversight would be greatly appreciated. Sincerely, Bob Retz.
Right. Thanks, Bob. We're going to move on to our staff report from our area extension director. What do you have to say to us?
Well, thank you. Good evening. And I appreciate y'all spending Valentine's Day with me. This is fantastic. So what I would like to start off first is to just say that we went through interviews for our support associate position. Thank you to Supervisor Bjork for being present and helping us and assisting us with that hire. I have an accepted offer. Melissa Burke will start on Monday. So we're really excited. She comes to us with an eclectic background, most recently working at the Florian Gardens as an event planner and gardens specialist. I don't have her right in front of me, but and she has 2 degrees, one in photography, one in natural resources. So we're really excited to bring her into this position, and it's a little bit scoped out a little bit differently than what Michelle's position was. So we're really excited to see how this position can shape and form. So I just wanted to give you that, and I can see Larry like smiling over there. So
well, she's probably be one of the few people in the
government center that has a safety certification for chainsaw operations.
Yes.
Unless maybe Jim does. I didn't check.
Not certified.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, she has a lot of skill sets. So yeah, we're really excited to bring her in. She's very enthusiastic. She's excited to join our team. So she will start on Monday, and we're going to have a potluck. If anybody wants to join us and meet Melissa, you certainly are welcome to come join us in our office. So secondly, on the agenda, you'll see that I have the area agriculture. I don't.
Modeling staffing report.
I should just turn it right over to Heidi, but yeah, the agriculture model staffing report. Thank you. I brought Heidi in. She graciously came in person, so I very much appreciate that. Heidi drove from Madison to join us today. She's the Institute Director and for agriculture, and I'm gonna kind of have her jump in, but first I wanted to kind of just set the stage. So, because I haven't really talked with this committee about this yet. We were just kind of waiting and seeing where this was going to head. And so this is a staffing model that Heidi has proposed across the state, and she'll jump into that a little bit. And I've talked with Chris about this model already, and I've talked to the other two counties. And with Katie Wantock's, when the Ag Institute stole her from us, so you can blame Heidi for that, by the way. She joined the state, and so that left a vacancy, and it left the opportunity to bring in the staffing model. So I'll leave it with that in terms of, I'm going to turn it over to Heidi to explain it and talk about it and answer any questions you might have, and then talk a little bit moving forward about what that might look like in this area. So Heidi, so you need to press the little person on there.
How's that? Perfect. Okay.
Good. And pull the mic a little closer to you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. It's a little surprising to drive up in the rain, but I guess that's better than snow. So, and I'm going to visit with Eau Claire County tomorrow. So this is great. I get to combine the trip. So, I've been in this role for about 4 years, and I spent time as a county educator for about 12 years before that. So I had experience as a county educator before I came into this role, which I think has helped me quite a bit. So when I took this job, we had about enough state tax funding to co-fund 55 ag positions across the state. And there are how many counties?
72.
Two, right. So bad math.
Mm-hmm.
So I came into a situation where I had sort of an unfixable situation where I was not able to meet the need for, or the desire for, matching positions across the state of Wisconsin. So I was already dealt sort of a low deck there. The other challenge that we've been facing for a long time is the evolution of agriculture. Agriculture has changed a lot over the 100 years that extension has been around. And so we have been hearing from our ag partners about our need to evolve to match the meeting needs of agriculture. And what agriculture has been asking us for, and this has come through our industry groups, is for people that can be specialized in a particular part of agriculture so that they can stay on the technological edge of where that part of agriculture is, or horticulture for that matter. So when you have a general ag educator position, which is what Katie did, what I did, you might be answering a tree disease question in the morning, dealing with master gardener volunteer issues in the mid-morning, and then dealing with county fair stuff in the mid-afternoon, and then trying to answer a dairy question. And it all ends up spreading people very thin. I actually left a general ag educator position to move to a crops and soils position so I could get some specialization. So I experienced that pressure when I was in that role as well. So, and I know Katie and I started around the same time. I know she also desired specialization so she could really be good at farm management, which is why she moved into the statewide farm management position. So I took the opportunity. I realized shortly into our hiring freeze that we went into during COVID I realized shortly into that we had the opportunity to really rethink how we were staffing agriculture to try to both meet the budget demands that we had and to try to respond to our ag partners at the state level that were asking us for these more specialized positions. So I didn't do it alone. I convened a group of internal people, both some of our researchers that we fund at UW-Madison, and then some of our county people, one of them including Jerry Clark, who's in Chippewa County. And we convened as a group and met for 6 months and reviewed what have other states done. We are not unique. The county agent role has been evolving in states across the country for a long time. So we looked at what other states had done. We looked at what our partners wanted and the diversity of agriculture and horticulture in Wisconsin. And then we came up with a staffing plan that we tried to meet those needs. It's not, nothing's ever perfect. So we understand that we may need, and we've made some adjustments already, but we do think it kind of gets at some of the issues that we're dealing with. So the basis of it is that instead of having one person that meets all the needs within the geography of a county, is you layer people with different types of expertise that can provide that expertise to the farmers that need that type of expertise. So Katie is an example of one of the new positions that we've developed that is in farm management that's working at a bigger geography. She's still based up here, but she's working statewide with a team of farm management people that are working on risk management and business planning and all the farm management things that farmers need. So that type of position is one type of position that we have now. We're fully state funding those. The other type of position that we're doing on a regional scale are regional crop educators and regional dairy educators. And that is because crop and dairy production tends to be our most intensive amount of operations across the state. So we need to have people working at a smaller geography. So we've been moving into this relatively quickly. We have regional crop and dairy educators that we've been hiring across Wisconsin, and they cover anywhere from 3 to 5 counties, depending on the part of the state that they're in. What we're proposing for your area is we have Lissa Seafelt, who's been specializing in dairy in Eau Claire County, and we have Jerry Clark, who's been specializing in crops in Chippewa County. So we're proposing combining the 3 counties together. Jerry would do crops for the whole region and Lissa would do dairy for the region. And then of course, you still have access to people like Katie, or your producers have access to people like Katie who are providing that farm management information. So besides farm management, we also have other types of statewide positions that are covering beef, swine, grazing is another one. And then I'm trying to think of the ones most relevant to you. We also have some new types of positions that are doing work related to agriculture and water quality, which is a huge challenge for our producers in the state. And they're looking at the intersection of agricultural production and when nutrients are leaving the field and to go into water. So there is a brand new hire that's an ag water quality educator that's up in the northwest part of the state. She's actually up in Burnett County. She just got hired a few weeks ago, but she would be relevant to your region as well. So I'll stop there. I realize I just said a lot, so please ask me some questions.
Is some of this going to be kind of you're going to see how it operates in like practical operation to see how well it works? Because I mean, obviously the one benefit to having, the one educator per county is that they were potentially more accessible to, producers in the county. But on the other side, the flip side of that, I can see where having them have to have such a huge array of things that they're familiar with probably meant a lot of times that they may not have been able to answer all of the questions. Correct. And it probably was quite a burnout factor with it as well.
Correct.
Because I can see, Katie's really kind of made a name for herself in the state with how she's embraced the farm management side of things and the financial aspect of farming. And that's a great aspect to have. I guess we'll just have to see. We've seen examples in the past where we've had educators spread between 3 or 4 counties, and it just didn't seem to be very effective. So I guess we'll have to see how this goes with having, one person spread between 3 counties.
Yeah, I think the advantage is that this is not a county agent position times 3.
Yeah.
So they have a stack of people that are also covering that area. So one adjustment that I have made based on what I've seen happening as we've rolled this out. So just for context, we lost about half of our ag staff through the pandemic. Not the Great Recession has been something that everyone's experiencing. We were not immune. So it's meant we've moved into this very quickly. The state is almost completely turned over into this model already, surprisingly. So we've been experiencing where the pain points are. One of the pain points was what happens when questions come into a county office? How do they get managed? And we have a new position that we just put into place that will be providing a system where questions can come in and they can get sorted on the back end to the appropriate expert. We've been trialing that with horticulture questions because we have never had good horticulture coverage, which has meant that we've had ag educators covering hort, which means probably not great answers being given in a lot of places, especially when you have a dairy person trying to answer a hort question. It's been that, so that was a need we saw a long time ago. So we've been rolling out this hort question system. I think it's working relatively well. They've been adding counties on. I mean, I haven't heard any complaints. I think they're managing the questions pretty well. So we're going to do the same thing for ag, and we've got a customer management system that we're using to push things out on the back end. So
okay.
So that's one adjustment that we've had to make because I've been hearing my questions are getting lost into the county office because the county support staff aren't even sure where to send questions anymore. So
okay.
Part of it's been because of how fast we lost most of our staff. That's been one of the problems, but I also think just where to send them is a problem as well.
So in some ways your hand was kind of forced to do this because there was no way to kind of replace that number of people under the same model that quickly.
I think by the time we came out of the hiring freeze, I had 22 out of the 55 people had left, which is a huge, I felt for a while like it was every week I was seeing a resignation or a retirement come in. So
where were people going? Just private sector or getting out of the whole thing and changing careers?
All different types of things. We have not been able to keep salaries at the pace and like a lot of government has seen. I think that's why they've been trying to catch up relatively quickly at the state level, but our salaries were falling behind. And I mean, the first few offers that I tried to make coming out of the pandemic, people said like, well, if you could give me 110,000 and I can't even get you like, and so that was what we were, because ag industry was they were outpacing us because they could just change salaries very quickly. And so, yes, if you're a sales manager for a agronomy company, you can make $150,000 plus. So it's a rapidly changing world. And so we just weren't able to keep up. So people were leaving when they realized they could do that. And then there's just retirements. We had a lot of people that, people aren't staying in jobs as long. That's just something that we all have to live with now. We have to realize that these aren't 20 or 30-year careers. We may have people just for 5 or 10, and we have to realize that that's just a part of how the workforce does things now. Gotcha.
Any other supervisors have questions or comments? Supervisor Quinn?
Thank you. I appreciate your report.
Yeah.
Very challenging. Just getting back to the sort of subcategories you listed, the beef, swine, grazing, ag, water quality. How is that the same kind of a entry process where you go through that producer goes through the local office and
we're hoping to connect that on the back end to our question system. So let's just use real people. It's easier. Bill Halfman is our beef specialist. If right now, we have sort of a mix of things happening where sometimes questions are coming into county offices. They're ending up with either a crop educator, and they might call Bill, and it might get to Bill that way. So or there may be support staff going to Bill directly. There's probably a mix of stuff happening. The long-term strategy is things come in on the front end into the question processing system, and they go to Bill so that he's able to take them in. We're hoping to, just a little more context, we know that about 30% of the calls that come in are about land rent. And we can answer those questions way more efficiently by giving people more of a canned response, because we have data we can give them without them having to talk to somebody and process it for so long. So that's the reason we're trying to shoot some of those off.
Let me ask follow up then just a little bit, because Dunn County, maybe in partnership with other counties, is probably going to be looking at and maybe moving to organize some sort of collaborative efforts around, say, grazing or water quality.
Mm-hmm.
That new lake district that formed in the state, even though they're not, and they may decide to do some things with regard to water quality that have to do with ag. Is there a role for those people in providing sort of technical assistance to that kind of effort?
Great question. And I have two different answers: grazing versus ag water. So ag water we have 4 ag water quality outreach specialists, very long title. We have 4 of them. Their primary audience is right now the producer-led watershed groups.
Right. Okay.
So that effort is well funded by DATCAP. Those groups are well organized, and they are a pre-made audience for us so that those people can plug in, and they're all distributed across the state. Right. So right now what's happening, if we want to look at, soluble phosphorus, or a group is like, we want to understand soluble phosphorus losses, they can invite an ag water person in and they could give a presentation about that. But I think there's 30 of those producer-led watershed groups now, which makes it a nice amount for the 4 educators to primarily work through. Grazing is a little different. His name is Jason Cavadini. He's in Marshfield. He is trying to he's never going to survive if he writes grazing plans for the state. So we know that he will quickly burn out. So we have a lot of land conservation NRCS that are very interested in grazing. And so I'm trying to get him positioned to train the trainer. So he's training those people around grazing topics to keep building the masses around that.
So if we had a group here that was organized somewhat similar to a farmer-led watershed group, say, but around grazing, he would be available, and we would contact him directly for that.
So what we would try to do first is see if there's somebody land conservation and NRCS that could do it, that has been through some of Jason's training, so that we're using those people to build up their skills. So that would be the ultimate, because he's gonna get spread pretty thin. So
right. Thank you.
Yep.
Supervisor Bjork.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to give you another job to do. I'm good at that. They've heard me say that before. I read a 1.5-page article last night in the Wisconsin State Farmer that had everything to do with farmer mental health and suicide. And I was kind of surprised on a couple of things in the article that I read. And one was that, there's a state of Wisconsin, like resource person that, would meet with somebody that was troubled. But the article went on to say that when farmers are troubled, they turn to somebody they trust. And silly me, but I always thought that was an extension agent at some level. And we probably got people that do mental health stuff in extension. But article is also very specific in that farmers, men that have problems, and I have a hard time saying, I got a real mental problem here. they wanted chit chat. They wanted chit chat about farms. The response that was given was, what keeps you up at night? And, you know, it's everything from crops, you know, weather, all these things you can't control. And I've been there. And I had a wife that hung in there with me. And a lot of these guys that have not, according to the article. And so, I mean, I don't know if it's a counseling thing for marriage and family, or if it's just that an extension agent has to have that number on who they might call that could get some help to somebody. Because the article went on to say how farmers, for the most part, don't blame a shortage of feed on the weather because they survived a drought. I did in 1988. They say, if I'd have done something different, I would have had more crops.
Yeah.
So, you know, Tom can contest, you know, would give you the numbers about the fewer farms and farm families that are on the land today than they were just 10 years ago. I mean, it's awful what has happened.
Yeah.
And the article also went on to say that I thought was real interesting, that I had never heard it or read it before, is that, you know, everybody knows that farms for the most part are multi-generational. And so you've got 3 generations working for a common goal. And the common goal might just be making it whatever it might be, you know, just, you know, the management of the family. And and then when you wash out as a farmer, you not only lose the structure of those 3 generations, you lose your business, you lose your identity, you lose where you live. So that's awful hard to carry. And I made some good choices, and, you know, it's, you know, I'm, you know, way better off than I was years ago. But going right back full circle, if there was a person that I would needed to talk to and trust, you know, it would have been an extension agent. And maybe that extension agent couldn't be the person that could get me what I needed at the time, but that would point me in the right direction. And there's no, I don't think there's an answer for it. You can't guarantee success and everybody's adventure in what they do in life. But I'll tell you what, nothing like being a dairy farmer to give you the work ethic to get another 150 miles in the day on the semi.
Yeah.
You know, you're dead tired of 500 miles. And you think about what you had to do to get there. By God, you can get another 150 miles that day. And dear friend of mine that got me into transportation died of a heart attack in Texas because he went into the service desk and says, I need to go to the hospital. And they says, we'll call you an ambulance. He says, no, I can drive there. He goes out, cranks down the trailer, drops dead. That's a farmer at Ring. So, you know, just, you know, you can't solve all the world's problems, but it's a heavy load to have the responsibility that, you know, somebody's coming to you. Don't be surprised when they say things are really bad. And what do you think I should do? Katie, I would imagine some of the stuff that Katie hears would just get you.
Yeah. Oh, I can appreciate it. I heard it too
okay.
as an,
So
yeah,
that's,
yeah.
so another
And
job for
when Katie and I first got hired, there was 80 of us across the state working, and that was more than one per county. And people were staying in positions longer. I appreciate your like that trusted person. It's been more of it's a struggle for us. It's a struggle for us to maintain all the roles that are expected of us, right? As an extension, because we've become so many things in so many places. And it's hard to see, but we've faced 30 years of constant budget cuts. And there's a real consequence to that on the ground that I think we spent many, many years cutting everything else we could except educators and agents on the ground. And then it just happened that we had to it just kept getting cut. And we got to the point where, and when I took this job, people were saying in exit interviews, like, this is an impossible job. Why did you hire me with a dairy science degree? And I'm answering tree questions. I don't know what I'm doing. And I feel like a failure. And so those were the sorts of things that we played a lot of different roles when we had masses of us. I think we're cutting back to playing a role of, hoping to deliver research-based information on farm production. I hope we get back to the point where we have 80 people across the state. That would be great.
Yeah. It just needs to be that one person.
Yeah, I agree. And we've done so similarly. Joy Kirkpatrick is another farm management outreach specialist. She specializes in farm succession, but also has done a lot of mental health. And she has also taken a similar tack to what I said about Jason Cavadini, where she's done train the trainer. So training people, both mental health providers that don't know agriculture. She's worked to train them about agriculture. And then she's also worked to train agricultural professionals to recognize signs of mental health challenges. So we continue to do those sorts of things and look for opportunities to make sure that all of our people on the ground understand when they see a problem and someone's in stress. So I appreciate it. I hope we continue to be that trusted resource across the state.
I think it will.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of the people that I've
turn your mic on.
Oh, I mean, of the people that I have known, certainly more than Dunn County, they've got that quality.
Mm-hmm.
And it isn't their responsibility to get somebody well, but it is kind of their responsibility to know who to call and say, maybe you ought to be helping this guy if you can. And I was surprised that state of Wisconsin Department of Ag, I don't know how many people they had. They mentioned one young lady that was working in central Wisconsin, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But it struck me that it was the chit chat on what's going on the farm that opened up the receptacle to receive information.
Yeah.
And give it.
Well, and that's how we do all of our work. I mean, even if we're talking about personal issues, but even if you're trying to convince a dairy farmer to change how they breed, it takes a trusting relationship to do that. So I always called it the meeting after the meeting. You always stay or roll the cob after the field day and have the conversations that lead to the relationships that allow you to be trusted. So I agree. And I feel that's always going to be the basis of our work, is making sure those relationships are there. So.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Any other comments, questions for any other supervisors? No. Thank you. Appreciate the update.
Sure.
So if I could just piggyback now that you have the context of what the model that we're looking to bring forward. So, and I've talked with our county manager, Corpola, regarding this as well. And so we've talked to Chippewa County a few weeks ago. They're agreeable. All three county managers and administrators are also agreeable to the model. we have Eau Claire County tomorrow night. So the next steps would be so we are asking for an advisory vote tonight, just to say that, yes, we are in agreement to move forward with this model. And what will happen then is once we get that from Eau Claire County and everybody's on board, we'll look to change the contract for this year yet. So that because you don't have coverage right now, they are helping out. Both Lissa and Jerry have been fielding calls. They've been helping as they can. They have a meeting, or Jerry's holding a meeting over here soon as well. So you haven't been left with nothing. They have picked it up, but it'll be more of that that more specialized area with coming in then with those with Lissa and Jerry, and they'll then be reporting to you just as our other area. And I'm trying to figure out that model. I think we're burning out our area wide educators by coming to every meeting. There's 3 of them and I'm adjusting to that too. I didn't have all 3 counties in my other area every month, so it's a heavy lift. And so what we need to do better is you'll have their reports every month. We'll still pull the data. You'll still get the reports. You'll see what's happening. And then we'll bring them in on maybe a quarterly basis to talk with you. And then of course you have the opportunity to talk with them during that time that they aren't here to answer any questions and those kinds of things. So moving forward, we would amend the contract. What that means is it's a $15,000 savings about per county. What we're asking then to do with that is to reinvest that into our budget. And we're asking to reinvest that in a couple of different ways. One would be to increase Margaret's FTE. Currently, she's at 75%. The county or the state, and when I say the state, she's sitting here, Heidi, has agreed to cost share that at the 0.25 that's left. So that means that it would be lifted to the flat fee of the 1.0, which is 46 or 44.9 this year. And then I think it increases to 46 for 2024. So we would use that a couple of $1,000s per county. So we would use that to increase Margaret to a 1.0. And then what we don't have in any of the counties right now that we're looking to fund is summer 4-H interns or additional support, whatever that might look like for the 4-H educators across the area. So we'd like to put that money towards allowing them to hire when they need it. Summer is usually a really heavy lift. And so we would be looking to increase them or bring in some help for them during the summertime or whenever they need it. So taking some of that money and shifting it that way. The rest, honestly, our operations budget here in Dunn County is fantastic. Thank you for supporting extension. We have what we need in the operations. So depending on what that intern would cost, if there's anything left, one, we would either not be able, we would try to, for the 2024 budget, try to come in at a 0 budget, even with the increases for staff. And then, or else hand it back over. So that's what we're looking for tonight, is that agreement that we'll work through that, and the operations side will work through as well as we move forward. So, so that's the next steps, and then the cost savings, what we would like to do with that as well.
Do we have that? I don't know the procedural thing, because this isn't like, it's like is an action item or budgetary related in a way, or I'm not exactly sure then.
I would say that if you essentially, if you gave a thumbs up to the request for the change of the model, then next month, the finance department could help to prepare a budget adjustment to move those funds accordingly around. And it just sort of shifts the pots, and they might even decide they don't necessarily need to move them, but that's a potential.
Yeah. So what's nice is that where the money is right now is in the contractual services. So the 4-H the 4-H intern, that would be, we'd run that through the state, so that would go through the 136 contract. and increasing Margaret's position, the horticulture position would also come through the 136 because she's already in there. So I would imagine from there, so because we don't know what that 4-H cost will be, they're also looking at some AmeriCorps members that we're having the opportunity to bring forward as well. All of that would come out of the 136. So I don't really think there would be a need for moving the money, but more assessing if we need the whole 15,000, and we can do that towards the end of the year. And obviously we'll be giving back whatever we don't use. And then for next year, we'll readjust what that might look like in the contract. So we're in a good spot because we're not asking you for any money for this model or any money to increase the horticulture presence or 4-H. We're able to take care of our needs with the budget that we have with the cost savings of that ag model. So that's what we'd be looking at.
That's the other thing. Jerry is a 20 to 30 year person with an extension. He's already been doing crops and soils work here. Lissa's also been with us for 10. Almost close to 10. She hasn't been in Eau Claire for that whole time, but so you are getting 2 more experienced colleagues and that already have some connections to the producers. So I'll put that out there too as an advantage. And I think they were already doing quite a bit of sharing when Katie was here. So
I'm appreciative that, with the model that Heidi has been agreeable to having this, what's been working between the 3 counties, because they have been working across and kind of specializing already. And then working across the 3 counties, it's been working, it makes sense. And so it just made sense to continue with this. And, Heidi kind of gave the green light to allow that. And I'll tell you, Jerry and Lissa are already talking, they're already working with their program managers, the new program managers, they're already trying to scope what this might look like. So I don't think you're going to see, in fact, I think you're going to see an increase, and the producers are going to see an increase in support with this model, especially in this area. So I think it's a really positive move, and and it's also a cost savings, which is not usually what you get. So works well.
Does anyone want to put a motion toward moving forward with this staffing model?
I would, if that's all right, make a motion that the committee approves the revised service and staffing model as proposed today and the accompanying budgetary changes that be required.
Anybody second that?
I can second that. Yeah.
Any more discussion?
Try to get that summer intern.
We're already in the works.
If no more discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion passes.
Thank you.
So, do you have additional financial report that you want to share, or
just
before we move on?
The financial report in the packet. It is the first month of the year, so not a whole lot in there, other than we will have a cost savings because we did reduce our MiFi devices. So that is that little bit that's showing less than, but not a whole lot to go on projecting out 12 months after one.
Any comments from anybody or questions? If not, we're going to move on to our extension educator updates. Back over to you.
Thank you. So if educators, if you want to just, so again, what we're proposing is that you have their reports in front of you. And so they're going to come forward if you have any questions, certainly from the report. Certainly now is a great time to ask the educators those questions, and then having them just give a brief highlight of the month, something that's exciting them since last time they saw you, something that's happened, something that they can report on that they want to share with you in person. So if you want to, and then Zach is going to be giving the more in-depth report. And so we'll skip his, you can ask him some questions during that time. And I would say to really razz him.
And I don't have any, it's another thing to consider too, instead of if it's an issue having people travel here all the time, right? We have Zoom too. So there is always that option for people to pop on there if they have time in case there are questions that pop up too.
Yes, very good. Yes, and that's exactly the staff. It's nice because on these days, a lot of times they travel here and try to take care of other business at that time as well, because they know this is a standing meeting. But certainly that is an option for the staff as well to join us via Zoom. So thank you for being understanding of that and accepting of that. So I don't know who wants to jump up first, but you're going to need to be on the microphone. So you do have to come to the table.
All right, well, I'll go first. I don't have much. I'm here for your questions if you have any. As you may have read, we have our new educator is Hillary Roth. She is based out of Chippewa, but as you know, Chippewa and our Eau Claire educators cover Dunn County. And so I'm just getting her up to speed, onboarded and learning our curriculum and our partners. And she's been shadowing Joy and Jael. And so, yeah, just getting her ready to get in there and start programming. We've got her in an elementary school in Chippewa, but we have our eye on Downsville Elementary coming up here in Dunn, so she'll hopefully be helping with that. I am actually starting almost on FY24 planning, and the first part of that is our 3-year action plan that I look at, and so we have some equity reflections to think about, like how do we engage our partners to assess their needs and their understandings and their priorities, and the same with our learners and our community members. So that's kind of on the docket this month too, is to kind of rally my team and say, okay, how are we going to outreach? How are we going to, what questions are we asking? Are we meeting the needs of our partners? So that's all on our agenda this month as well. Yeah. Any questions?
Any questions for Sandy? No.
All right.
You're excused.
Thank you.
Next up. No, that's long on one thing. Sorry. I'll get over here.
Hello, I'm Louisa Gerasimo, your Human Development and Relationships educator, and I specialize in family engagement and relationships. And I have my report is already in front of you, so I'm not going to repeat anything from that. If you have any questions, I'd welcome those before I tell you some things that are not in my report. Any questions? Giving it a long wait, I'm going to go on. So one of the things that you get as a value when you bring extension into your community is that we are linked in with our colleagues all the way across the state. So some of the programs that I offer in person, I'm also offering via Zoom in cooperation with colleagues in the region. And that is a really great way to not have to repeat things. We can do one class with a reasonable number of people, and that's working so well. I wanted to point out to you some of the things that are available to Dunn County starting this month. The Strong Couples Program, a 6-session self-paced online program with video calls to a trained coach. So it's sort of something couples can do on their own. We're launching on Valentine's Day. That's today. It is a free program, and it is through the Illinois Extension and Wisconsin's Extension. So we're cooperating on that. These are things I advertise on Facebook. I'm trying to share out with partners, which is something I'm getting better at as I get to know more people who are working in the right circles to be able to share that. We're also doing resilient co-parenting. These are considered booster sessions for people who have done the co-parenting classes that I typically teach every other month or so. And some of the topics I thought you might be interested in, the one we just did was families fighting fair. And we have some on co-parenting teens, which if you think about how hard it is to parent teens, you think about co-parenting teens, it just complicates things. But it also includes self-compassion, and I think that's one I'm helping with, and mindful money practices. I am getting trained in We Cope, which is a different institute, the Health and Wellbeing Institute, but has been very useful for many of my colleagues in our institute because, as Larry was saying, people are under a tremendous amount of strain, and understanding how to manage life's challenges by connecting with positive emotions turns out to be really useful for people. And it's a free program, and we're doing it right now this month with people all the way across the state. And it is very interesting. I've been doing evenings because I've been too busy to do the noon ones. And to see people in their own homes and to hear a little bit of their stories and the stuff on their plate has been very impactful for me. And I think will guide some of the work that I do in the coming years to understand as people age, for instance, people really have different challenges than the young couples who also have, like Zach, maybe not getting sleep at night because they got a kid up. So that's something exciting. And then we're focusing on fathers in February, but we have a whole Thursday session of online parenting classes. All of those are free and open to our Dunn County people. Who's next?
Good evening. I'm Margaret. I'm the horticulture educator, and 'tis the season for gardening. People are starting to call in with their gardening questions. One man did bring in a sample for us to look at. He, I have to mention this, he brought in what he thought were plant seeds, and it can be very difficult to identify a plant seed, but this one was actually very easy. It turned out to be little mouse turds. So unfortunately, he's going to have to deal with a whole different problem. One thing I did want to mention, and this I did put in my report, but just to elaborate a little bit on it, Scott Nebefeld, he's the facilities and parks manager. He reached out to Extension a bit ago to ask us, or to ask me if I would help put together a planting plan for, or kind of a sustainable landscape for the space in front of the government center. So I have finished putting together a draft list of plantings that might work for that area. I'm focusing primarily on natives because the idea is, the goal is not only beautification, but once these plants are established, hopefully they will require lower maintenance and also less water. Have good form. I'm looking at plants that are non-aggressive. Some plants, some natives can get fairly aggressive. So I want long-lived, non-aggressive plants that are well adapted to our area, which will help with disease and insect issues, not hopefully being a problem. So like I said, the majority of them are natives to the area. So I thought it would also work well as maybe a demonstration area of a sustainable native landscape that will pull in some pollinators and some butterflies and things like that. So anyway, I'll be reaching out to Scott to talk about possible landscape plans, see if he's on board with the natives. I'm going to put together a couple of different plans that he can think about. I'm going to bounce them off some other gardeners I know to make sure I'm not missing anything. But hopefully this year we'll have some beautiful plantings. Now, if they aren't, we do go with a native perennial plan. Just keep in mind, it takes a good 2-3 years for them to come into their own. So we'll have some signage out there to let folks know that this is a garden that's going to look gorgeous in a few years, but it's going to have to take a little time, but it's well worth the wait. Any questions on my report or anything?
Supervisor Quinn.
Glad to hear about the plantings. Just another, I know you're doing a lot of work with the Boys and Girls Clubs, and that's great. I remember a few years back, I seen that there was a fairly big interest in school gardens in elementary schools. Do we have any of that going on?
Since I've been here, I came in 2019. Of course, COVID got in the way of a lot of that. I have not had any schools reach out specifically about garden help. I have had a few reach out for guidance in Eau Claire County, but not in Dunn. But that's something Master Gardeners have also been very helpful with doing. Yeah. So now the Boys and Girls Club garden we do is at a school. So that's one school garden. But no, so definitely if you know of a school or any group that is looking to do some gardening, please have them give me a call.
Yeah. Well, I think the challenge is, they're not in school all summer, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
So it can get pretty ratty looking, but there's a plan to.
Yeah, you really kind of have to, what other schools have done or tried to do is get a core group of students who want to kind of be a garden club and keep it going through the summer. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I offer? My children go to Wakanda Elementary and Menominee Middle School. I believe both of them have active gardens. I think that middle school did a little salsa garden. Yeah, there are things going on. Yeah.
Good to know. So they can do that without me. So, but if they need any assistance, if they have any disease issues or anything, please have them reach out. We're always happy to help with that. But, yeah.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman. I think last time we spoke about Dunn County Electric.
Yep.
Butterfly Garden. So there's a 1 or 2 years jump on what's working and how it looks and because I mean, the thing is, I'm going to enjoy the heck out of it, but there are going to be people that love lawnmowers are just going to freak out.
Yeah.
So I mean,
And I did drive by that, and you're right. Now, a true prairie is going to look very random and messy because that's how nature wants it. Butterflies prefer things in patches like that. The hope here in the landscape up front is I'm going to do more clumping. So hopefully it'll look more like a landscape, and it may get that way, but I know you're absolutely right. A lot of people like a more formal look to their landscape. So it'll kind of be a hybrid, hopefully, of again trying to focus on plants that'll stay pretty clumped and spread slowly, so it will hopefully have more definition, just for the aesthetics. Yeah.
And we need to tell taxpayers how much money the county's saving by not having to mow that grass.
To mow that or to hopefully water that too much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Hello, I'm Addison Vang. I'm the community development educator. And just to add to my report, the Food Entrepreneur Ecosystem Development web series, I'm gonna identify like the business that we're actually working with to put that on. So this web series, it's there's gonna be 2 virtual web series a week, and for one of the series we're actually going to highlight a Chippewa Valley business, which is Collab, which is a shared office space, as well as they also provide entrepreneur business startups and business support. So they do quite a lot. They supported a lot of businesses throughout the Chippewa Valley. So they're going to be there to kind of talk about what they do and kind of supporting businesses. So the Food Entrepreneur Ecosystem Development is basically food business, a food business support training workshop. So a collab will just be slightly different than typical resources that we see, but we thought it would be kind of interesting to kind of have something a little bit different. And also with Collab, we're actually going to be showcasing again another business from the Chippewa Valley. It just happens to not be in this county, but it's in Chippewa, which is Wildflowers. So hopefully in the future, we can do more of these types of programming and showcasing like more of businesses and organizations that are in the Chippewa Valley, and hopefully, we'll find someone in Dunn County next time. But the feed series is a ongoing series that the extension puts on. And right now we've been putting 2 on a year. So there's a spring and a fall version. And with COVID kind of getting over that, we're kind of getting back more to also like kind of a hybrid or in person. So this one is a virtual series, but we're looking at what the fall version might look like. So I just want to update on that. And we also have a vegetable wash station that we're going to be putting on. So this is a collaboration partnership with DACCAP, the Eau Claire area among mutual assistance, Chippewa Valley Produce. So there's quite a few partnerships. So this is going to just be vegetable wash stations. Most of these participants we anticipate are going to be like farmers market vendors, small farmers. This will be the second of a series of trainings from a grant that we received from DATCAP. So the first one was a pretty big success. We had about 21, 22 people that showed up, and they built a hand washing station. So this would be kind of like, the next phase of, like the washing of the actual vegetables. So we're pretty excited about that. And tomorrow I have a grant writing workshop. This is a statewide project, and all the educators that's a part of it, we've been promoting this within our counties, and it has gotten some very, very good interest. So we have quite a lot of people. The last one, we had about 100 people show up, and there was, I think, about 60 people on a waiting list. So we plan to kind of keep putting these on to kind of support organizations that are looking at, trying to start a organization, or just, working on thinking about like grant writing and what they should consider, when it comes to like, should we apply for a grant or not? So we had some pretty good responses from that, people from all over the place, government, nonprofits. So people seem to like that. Yeah, I think that is my report. Any questions?
Your grant workshop, is there a focus, like, as far as like, is it based on, food programs, or is it based on a community organization? What exactly is the focus of the
so the grant is to support, it's targeting BIPOC small farmers. But that doesn't mean, like, if you're not a BIPOC, so a BIPOC is a biracial, people of color. But it doesn't mean like, you have to be a person of color to show up. It's open to anyone. But that is like the target audience. And the idea is to support them in eventually, expanding their or diversifying their markets. A lot of these individuals tend to be dependent on one market. So the idea behind this workshop and the grant is that it's going to be focused on building a vegetable wash station, but we'll bring in some of our partners and some of the other agencies to kind of provide like information on programming. So anyone that shows up, they'll gain awareness of resources that's available that they might not know about. This last one with the hand washing, we had the Farmers Union present on the local food purchasing assistance program, which is a new program to support small farmers. I believe it's 200 acres or less, with purchasing and aggregating produce. So it's a brand new program. So they came and they kind of introduced that program, and then had some question and answer. We also had DACAP present on food safety and then washing and stuff like that too. So there's definitely other information that we try to incorporate into this program. So that definitely helps with partnering with DATCAP and Farmers Union, because they have a lot of resources. So it helps with kind of thinking about like, what else can we add to this program? Does that answer your question?
No, not at all. I was more asking about, you're doing a grant workshop tomorrow.
Oh,
and who is that aimed at?
Oh, okay.
So I was going, I think you already explained the other stuff.
Okay.
So
yeah, because so the grant workshop is really it's just a grant one-on-one, like a very high level grant workshop. It doesn't dig very deep into like, you know, the nuances and everything. So it kind of just gives you like that very first phase of like, should we consider getting a grant or not? So we kind of go through like the pros and cons and just make sure that they kind of think about like, you know, is this something that we want to do? Also kind of providing information on where they can go find grants. So that's really what it is. We also provide some information. So all the participants, they'll have access to a resource folder where we'll have you know, places like we'll list like places of like foundations and stuff within their counties. So that's one of the benefits of being a part attending is that you have access to this shared folder. And you'll have that access, you know, like pretty much for forever. We never close it. So yeah, so it's very, very high level. It doesn't dig too deep into like teaching exactly how to like write the grant, but it's the very first phases and stages of just thinking about, you know, like should I do this? And then providing resources on like where to go, you know, possibly like who different organizations that you could possibly reach out to kind of start thinking about you know, the grant writing process. So it's the, I guess you could think of it kind of like the
Grant
grant
writing
writing
101.
yeah, like grant writing 09 or something like that, like the pre-grant writing class. Just really start thinking about it. Mm-hmm.
Any other supervisors have questions for Addison?
Good. All right, thank you.
You're excused. And I think we have Zach with a full-fledged presentation today. Here. And sorry, Ann, you're not going to get a handout because you're remote. I guess we could hold it in front of a camera.
No, that's all wrong.
All right, thank you. I was going to do a PowerPoint, but I thought this information was just so important. I take it home and look at it and things like that. So there you go. Just some handouts for you. I just want to start. I know I introduced myself last time, and I honestly don't remember how much I said because I've been introducing myself a lot this last month. I kind of feel like I have like 3 stages. Like the first one was like hi, I'm Zach, happy to be here. And then like the last one's like, oh, this is my whole life story. So I'm going to maybe do a little bit, a quick version of more my life story of how I got here and why I'm in this role and why I'm excited to be here for you all, because I feel like we'll be working together quite a bit. You should probably know that. So I'm going to start most recent, work my way backwards. So most recently, before I got this position, I was teaching. I was down in Downsville. I taught for the Menominee School District for 2.5 years as I left this year. I was teaching in total about 8.5 years. So me and my wife, we have a wife and a son who is, it's his birthday tomorrow. His month's birthday will be 14 months tomorrow. We've lived in kind of the area, I say, for about the last 10 years, because before we moved to Menominee, we lived up in Prairie Farm, Dallas area. So not quite Dunn County, but pretty close. So we lived in the area for about 10 years. I went to school in River Falls. Actually, both times I went to school, it was in River Falls. So I've been like Western Wisconsin for a good part of my life. So I taught, like I said, for about the last 8.5 years or so. Before I did that, I was doing environmental ed work. So my first degree when I graduated college was conservation with an outdoor education minor. So I was doing programs like an outdoor ed program where schools would bring the kids to come in for a week at a time, and they'd hand the kids over to us and we do all the lessons and things like that, like a camp setting. I was working for a ski hill out in Colorado where I did preschool ski lessons, which gave me kind of that working with that really young population. And the one I think that was probably a big help for this job is I was a ranger up at the Apostle Islands. So there I did programs for everybody, youth, adults, anyone who came out. I talked to adults as visitors quite a bit, and kind of got that being used to answering questions, which is a big part of this job side of it. So I think that really helped with this. Going back even farther, I was involved in 4-H. I went to a club meeting the other day. They asked me to do the math. I think I was in for about 10 years because I started in 3rd grade and then I went, you can stay in 1 year after you graduate. So that'd be about 10 years. That's kind of what got me to this point. I'm going to have to agree with Larry on something here, which I don't, it's kind of scary if I do that, but he was right. He was talking about that one person that you trust. And as a teacher, we always, we try to be that person and we try to reach out to all the kids and make those connections. But when I was young, it was the 4-H agent that I was really close with. I did a lot of the older youth stuff and she led all those activities. So I was really close with that person. So that's kind of what led me to this point. When I went back to school to get my teaching degree, I thought, this would be a good degree to have if I decide that I want to go in the 4-H world. I've been saying, I don't know if I was quite ready to leave the classroom yet. I thought at some point I'd be doing something a little bit different than teaching, but maybe a few more years, but the job came up. So, you had to take it then. So, that's me and that's why I'm here. So any questions on that before I move on? No? Okay. I just want to talk a little bit about 4-H in general, kind of what the goals are of the program. Maybe not get too in depth with it, but kind of what we do and why we're here. And the first thing I put on the packet is a graphic you've probably seen before. It talks about how 4-H youth 4 times more likely to make contributions to their communities, 2 times more likely to be civically active. And I'm not going to read the whole thing too. You can read the rest yourself. But it really just talks about these good positive outcomes that 4-H has for youth. And one of the reasons that it has these outcomes is because it doesn't just focus on the project itself, but all the life skills that the youth will get as they do these projects. I pulled this quote off of the website just because I thought it was nice. I'll read it to you. We are committed to providing opportunities for youth to learn life skills like decision-making, problem solving, caring for others, generosity, making healthy choices, and more. So I think that kind of sums up what 4-H is really all about. It's not, I'm probably gonna say this a few times, it's not just learning how to do the woodworking project, but it's all the skills that you get while you do those projects. My little analogy that I thought of today is because it's Valentine's Day. You buy your spouse a gift or wife flowers or something like that. It's not that you want them to have the gift, but you want them to feel loved and cared for and connected with, and that's why you do it, right? So it's kind of the same thing. Like, yes, we want them to learn how to knit or how to sew or do this project, but we also want all these other things that go along with learning how to do all those things. So some of the handouts I have just kind of go along with that. The first one is a packet that's actually for volunteers, but I thought it did a good job of kind of highlighting the life skills that are taught in 4-H. If you look at that little circle diagram, it gives you the 4-H's, the head, health, hands, and heart. And then it breaks it down into the different life skills that go off of that. And I thought this is, something that I was half kidding when I said this stuff was really important. You can take it home and look at it. But it is something you wouldn't have time to just look at it on a PowerPoint slide. So I printed out for you. It kind of goes into a bunch of those different skills and how 4-H really helps to promote them. Another kind of a word that we've been using in 4-H lately is sparks. And sparks is basically just saying this is what gets the kids' interest, what sparks their interests, really. And it's those sparks that help to lead to these other life skills. So if you kind of look at this trajectory one right here, this is off of what we call the thriving model. And it starts with youth sparks. So an example of this would be, I was at a club meeting on Sunday, and they moved it forward, so I didn't miss the Super Bowl. That was nice. But I was at a meeting on Sunday, and I was talking about this Clover University that we're putting on. And one of the activities that we might be doing for this is something with fly fishing, tying flies, casting. I have some connections with the Trout Unlimited, so I'm trying to get them to come in and do this. And the boy next to me, he perked up. He's like, "Oh, Mom, I want to go. I want to go." Okay, so great. We have that spark now. We have that connection to the youth. And now, if you look at this diagram, it kind of shows you all the other things that go along with it. You know, the openness to challenge and discovery, growth mindset, all these life skills that they can get from doing this project. And it goes into the outcomes. It breaks up into two different outcomes, the developmental outcomes and then the long-term outcomes. And if you look at those, they go right, that leads right back to the 4 ways that youth have been proven to grow in 4-H. And then the last one I gave you, there was actually a little survey done with this. And I don't know if the data for Dunn County is that reliable in the sense that when I looked at it, I think we only had about 10 youth do the survey both years. But it does kind of show you again the different things that they're measuring when they do these surveys and how they grow. So this was on a scale of 1 to 7. So 7 would be the highest. And if you look at that, they're all pretty close together, except for a couple of them maybe went down a little bit. But again, it was only about 10 youth that did this one. But again, it just shows you the things that the people in 4-H are looking for when we make programs, when we work with youth, ways to get them to grow and not just, learning to do the project, but all those things that go to it. Okay. Any questions on that before I go on? I'm going to go into kind of some of the county data and what we're seeing in Dunn County right now, but any questions on like that philosophy behind 4-H? No. Okay, good. So real quick, I'm just going to touch on these because some of the stuff is in what you have in your packet already for my report. But I just wanted to go into some of the things that we're doing, highlight them again. So the Performing Arts Festival is coming up in a couple weeks. Art University, real quick, that is a collaboration between with the 3 counties in the area, and then University of Stout and AIM Arts Integration Menominee are coming together to put that together. So the college students are going to be leading virtual classes for the youth. So I think that's going to be a really neat activity for them. We went back and forth if it should be in person. It was virtual, COVID a couple years ago, and kind of back and forth. Should it be virtual? Should it not? Because travel is going to be difficult, especially if it's from 3 counties coming here on a Monday night. So we can do that one virtually for this year, and we'll kind of see how the feel is, and maybe we'll do something different for next year. But got that camp is still going on, still working on that. And then the Summer Academy is for the older youth. It's a leadership workshop down in Madison for a few days in June. That's a statewide program, but I want to throw that in there because it's coming up. I'm going to really try to push that. So, okay, so some Dunn County data, looking at where we are with enrollment and things like that in 4-H this year compared to others. So far, and these numbers are a little off because I know I just had a couple more youth enrolled this weekend. I pulled this last week, but we have 212 youth enrolled this year so far, and 34 volunteers. And so the way that the enrollment works, it opens in October, and to be able to show at the Dunn County Fair, you need to be enrolled by May 1st. So we'll probably slowly get more youth signing up. They should sign up right away, but that doesn't always happen, and it is what it is. But kind of that May 1st is when we can look and say this is kind of the set numbers of what we have. Now they can enroll all year long. So if someone finds out about 4-H, in June, and like, hey, I want to do that, they can still enroll. They just can't show at the fair. But May 1st is kind of when we look and see this is what the numbers are for the year. So 212 this year. Last year we had 234. So with that idea in mind, that we'll probably still get a few more, not too far off. And 66 volunteers last year compared to 34. So I feel like that number is a little off. Michelle and I were talking about a couple ways that maybe we could help the volunteers get signed up, because they have to do some trainings online now, which is, we feel, probably a barrier to some of them actually getting signed up to be volunteers. So we're going to try to find ways that maybe they can do those here with us, not like give the training, but be there to help them, be support for them if they have, issues with some of the technology and things like that. So we'll see if we can maybe do a few things to relieve some of those barriers of volunteers in 4-H. And then just real quick, the numbers we have of youth right now, we have 56% of the members are female, 43% are male, which is common throughout the state. It's always a little more female heavy. And then 42% come from a farm. 39% are from a rural community, but not living on a farm. And then 17% would be in town. Probably most likely be Menominee, but we do kind of pull from Eau Claire a little bit. But that 17% would be kids that live in a town. All right. Guys ready to play a game? Do we have time for a game? All right, let's play Family Feud real quick. The top 6 project areas in Dunn County 4-H. Let's play county board members against educators. I think educators have an advantage. So county board members, take a guess. What do you think one of the top project areas are in 4-H? Dunn County.
Come on.
Photography is number 2. Good job. All right.
Oh, you wanted number 1?
Well, let's see if the educators get number 1. Any guesses?
Mine is Louisa.
Gardening is not on there. I mean, it's one of that. I just pulled the top 6 real quick. Cooking was food and nutrition was actually number 7. I did have pulled that one down. I guess I pulled to the top 10. I took some more notes as the presentations were going on. So I'll give them to you. So the number 1 is art, then photography, like I said. Dairy and swine were both the same with 37 members. And then Cloverbud and horses were the last ones for the top 6. So those are kind of the biggest ones that we have. So kind of what we do, especially, for example, looking at this Clover University that we're putting on, is we're trying to kind of get a balance of doing projects that we know youth are going to want to do. So like focus on maybe the art and the photography, but also trying to get them interested in some of those less common projects for the counties. So trying to pull in some of those other things that are lower down on the list is what we're looking at doing. So kind of about me again, to wrap this up, what kind of my goals are for the next year, a couple years being new in here. First, I want to make sure that I get out and listen to the club members, listen to the leaders, make sure the program is going well for them. As you know, this job has been vacant for the last 6 months. So I want to really make sure that there's nothing that I'm missing. If there's a county program that they really like, then I want it to come back, make sure we get that back again. I know, for example, Battle of the Clubs, I've heard a lot of good things about that. I don't think it's going to happen this year just because I'm not quite ready to take that on, but something we'll get to do hopefully next year. So kind of listening to the clubs that way and really making sure that the people in the program are well taken care of and happy. And then I really want to do some more promotion of 4-H. Over the last 5 years, at least from the data we have, the enrollment numbers have been going down. COVID being one big reason. There's a big drop after COVID. So I really want to do some promotion. Some of these interns that hopefully we'll get, I'm hoping can help with that. So I'm hoping we can get into schools and not just give flyers, but get out to some of the schools and do presentations promoting 4-H. some of these community fairs and maybe the farmers markets and things like that, get a booth set up to let families and communities know about it and try to promote the program even more. And I guess that's it. Yeah. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions for Zach? Everybody's pretty quiet.
All right.
You were very informative. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh.
That's the problem. There's no space.
Oh.
This is our big room that we use, kind of like a gymnasium. So
Okay. Can do that.
All right, so we're going to move on, and actually, when I'm going to do some adjusting of our agenda because this meeting has gone on very long, and it's Valentine's Day. So I'm going to set aside the rural tourism website update. I wanted to have a long discussion about that, but I'm going to set that aside till next month. And with Chris's okay, I'm going to move our Dunn County communications update aside, and because I feel bad for having Chris having sat here for an hour and a half waiting for his presentation. So I would like to kind of move on to him so that he's not missing out on any Valentine's Day stuff. And maybe Addison, I can have you do a little bit of an introduction before we get to hear from Chris.
Yeah, so I don't really have too much of an introduction, but at our last meeting, we had discussed about possibly bringing on Chris to kind of, just kind of help with the county in, figuring out the direction that you want to go with, broadband for the county. So this is Chris, and his official title is Digital Equity Outreach Specialist, and he can probably fill you a little bit more about what that is, as well as kind of what Extension has been doing in regards to supporting broadband. And I think I'll just leave it at that. And I don't know, Chris, do you want to add anything else?
I'm good and ready to jump into it, Addison. So, okay.
All right, Chris, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. You know what? To do that, I think I'll have to have from Michelle, I think, sharing capability. If you could, Michelle.
You should be able to share.
Say again, please.
You should be able to share now.
Okay, let me try here, and I will. There we go. Are you seeing it?
Yes.
And I'll put it into slideshow here. If you whoop. Well, let's get started. We'll start with this. That's fine, as long as you can see it. That's the main thing here. But first of all, I'm coming to you from Eagle River, not from Madison. And when I was a county educator, and I was for the first 10 years, I've only been in this position because it's a newly created position for 7 months now. So jumping into the Digital Equity Outreach Specialist position on July 1st, but really cut my teeth, if you will, on rural broadband and helping people get rural broadband access right here in Vilas County. And then in Forest County, work with that, really started, if you will, the Forest County Broadband Commission, and also working with it in Oneida County. Let me rearrange a few things here so the slides aren't blocked. I'm going to do this, Jim, since this is our first meeting, and I also like Q&A. I did hear the letter in the beginning that was read about, I didn't catch the township within Dunn County, the town, I should say. But I did hear that this is a common complaint among many counties, and we, when I say we, I'll call politely my co-conspirator Gail Hike, who's been with Extension for many years. We work together on broadband. As we work with counties throughout the state, many people, especially in rural areas, and I'm talking even in Dane County, continue to try to get access in rural areas. So the first thing here, broadband for all, this is what with all the funding that's coming down, finally, after many years, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. There's a tremendous amount of funding from the federal government that's hitting Wisconsin and all states right now. And the motto that they're using, if you will, is broadband for all, internet for all. That is our eventual goal and end game, is to get everyone that chooses to be, which is close to 100%, connected to broadband. The 3 A's of broadband are access, affordability, and adoption. And right now, I sense that you're from the letter that was read, that a significant challenge within Dunn County is access, but it's also affordability for a lot of people. And we'll talk about that a little bit. And then I'll talk about adoption, which I consider to be the end game in Wisconsin. Most of the time, up until a couple years ago, for Gail and I, had been spent on access, and now it's increasingly moving to affordability and adoption more and more. So what do we mean by access? Quite simply, infrastructure deployment. And so that could be in the following 6. We're talking copper cable, which is certainly not the best. It works, but it's not the best. Coax, which is actually what I have to my home. I heard Charter Spectrum mentioned earlier tonight. There's coax, which insulated cables with a copper core. And that is served, actually, I think, in the majority of the nation right now is on coax. Fiber optic, I have starred there. That's really the gold standard. That's what everybody wants. It's future-proof, if you will. It's going to be with us for a long time. Glass fibers that convert electric signals into light. Yes, it's the fastest and most efficient. And it can be installed in the ground in many cases. In some cases overhead. Preferable, it's preferable to have that in the ground. There is wireless as an option. This is best certainly in flat open areas. And we have a lot of wireless up here, despite all the trees we have. Perhaps it's best over, wireless can reach as far as 10 miles away if you're over an open lake or something like that. If you have a lot of hills in a hilly part of the county, it becomes more challenging. And then there's satellite, which is sometimes good. Sometimes I think of the satellite that Elon Musk is actually, the name escapes me right now.
Starlink.
Yeah, Starlink. Thank you very much. All the time by that one, but Starlink. Right now, the challenge with that in most cases is that it's for about $125 a month. And you have to pay about $500 down payment for the initial equipment to that. So you can see how that would be cost prohibitive to a lot of people. To those who can afford it, they do like it, but it becomes a challenge of affordability. And we're worried about sustainable costs here. And then DSL, which is digital subscriber line, which is really a very slow. Hopefully you don't have that, and you can usually get speeds of between about 1 to 3 megabits per second with that. Right now, the Federal Communications defines broadband as 25 megabits per second of download and 3 megabits per second of upload speed. But the emphasis now with all this new funding is on, well, I've got 100 there, 100 down, 100 up. It's really probably going to be 100/20, 100 beats, because when you're uploading, by the way, when you're doing uploading to the internet, that is business being conducted. It's good for the economy if you see that, the business transactions. What do we mean by affordability? There's been studies done that at what price can low to moderate income people afford internet service, and what is sustainable for them on a monthly basis. One done by a nonprofit called Everyone On a year and a half ago, July of 21, was targeting people who make less than $50,000 per year, households, I should say, that make less than $50,000 per year. And frankly, 40% can't afford to pay anything for the internet. and then 20. So you have right there of those, of that group, of that subset, that group, that many people telling you that they can't afford to pay anything for the internet. And then really between the two of those, another, the remaining 60%, 38% can afford to pay in the $55 to $70 range. Just an FYI that a recent report by Consumer Reports says that the average price of broadband in the country, in the United States right now, is $74.99. So $75 a month, if you will, right now. So, and a little bit about adoption, as we're talking about that today, but broadband adoption is what I consider to be the end game of it, because if you build it, it just doesn't automatically mean that people will subscribe. And we're trying to find out in a lot of places why the take rate, why the subscription rate, if you will, is so low when some internet service providers deploy a fiber line down a major highway or down a street, or have wireless service in a rural area or something like that. Why don't people take broadband? In some cases, it's because they don't have digital devices. In some cases, they simply can't afford it from the statistics that I just showed you. And in some cases, people simply lack, they may be able to afford it, but they lack the digital skills to know what to do or interact with the internet. In a lot of cases, people 60 and over in particular, that group is lacking digital skills. So our end game is about getting people out, these digital navigators or digital teachers or whatever. They're named, they have different names in various parts of the country, and now various parts of Wisconsin are all about, and by the way, so is your librarians locally, are all about teaching people to use digital skills and feel comfortable using the computer. Now, I think a lot of counties are at this point here. How do we get anything accomplished? And again, I've worked with a lot of counties in Wisconsin who ask this very question. So, how do we get anything accomplished? This active network building and community alignment, simply leadership, and the what I have in the link that I've provided there is from the public, provided on the Public Service Commission, which, so you understand, the Wisconsin Broadband Office, whom I work with very closely, is housed within the Wisconsin Public Service Commission. And I know the state director very well. They've now, with all this funding, ramped up to, they have 15 people working in that office, and was on a Zoom for an hour and a half with them today. But they also are the entity that has many of the grants, the grant money within Wisconsin, the state grant money within Wisconsin. Many grants right now in this current round are due March 1st. So it's probably a little bit late right now to submit a grant application to that, because you'd want to figure out exactly what your goals are and where your priorities are within Dunn County. But there certainly will be another grant round coming down the pike in an estimated 6 months or something like that. Now, finding broadband, that active network building and community alignment is about finding broadband champions locally. And these are your trusted and reliable sources that you want to call on to build up your team. And I'm going to, after I finish this slide, I want to pause, Jim, because I want to find out from some of your team there where exactly where you are in broadband, is if there's a task force in the county, et cetera. But these people make wonderful champions and supporters of broadband. First of all, your librarians. That same entity I mentioned earlier, Everyone On, which has now become a nationwide, I think they're based in California, but a nationwide nonprofit that's found that librarians are the most trusted nationwide. Is there an economic development director in Dunn County? I don't know whether there is or not, but certainly if there is, or if there's an economic development corporation, that entity, I would anticipate, would be very involved in broadband, as was the one in Vilas County, right where I am, which I worked with for several years. And in Forest County, the same thing, Oneida County also. Workforce development I have listed there because this, I keep saying this is the workforce of the future, is digital skills. It's no longer the future, it's here. You have to have them or it's very difficult to get a job. A quick reference, even my buddy here in Eagle River that owns the Dairy Queen tells me that, Chris, it's 45 seems to be the cutoff point. When I have people over 45, they're not sure how to record the sales transaction in the computer. So even to work at the Dairy Queen these days, those digital skills are needed. And there have been studies that show that as your digital skills ramp up, so does your salary accordingly, if you will. Churches, faith-based organizations are getting very involved in this because they know the importance of it. Schools, you bet, all the everything related to that. Senior centers and AARP and an entity that's called GWAR, which is Greater Wisconsin Agency on Aging Resources. I've worked with the state directors of both of them just a little bit here and will be more so. But this is about training senior, and by the way, I'm now in that age category, training seniors to get digital skills and also finding volunteer seniors when they're retired, probably like me or something, to teach digital skills and train others in that. Healthcare providers, telehealth. I was talking with a county in Maryland a couple of months ago, St. Mary's County, Maryland, rural Maryland, southeast of DC. And they've actually established 2 telehealth booths right outside their library, which are probably about 4 times the size of the old-fashioned, I'm old enough to remember telephone booths very well. But for just for their people to pop in and use for telehealth purposes. And then you have housing centers, financial institutions, banks have become very good at this because they have to have that customer interaction so that customers can find on the website how much money is in their accounts, among other things, or do their bill paying, etc. online. And then you have, of course, ISPs, the internet service providers that I mentioned in businesses. But let me pause right there because I want to have a little Q&A and I have more slides, but I want to have a little Q&A and interaction with you. I want to inform, but I don't want to over-inform. So let me hear if you have questions now, or where you're at, or where your thoughts are in the process.
Well, Chris, our committee for years has had a focus on broadband, but it's strictly been here at the county level. And I believe it was a month ago or so when Addison first had kind of mentioned that you were a part of Extension, and also had mentioned that you would kind of help form some of these task force. We kind of realized that it was kind of like an aha moment, or a light bulb went off, that that's kind of something that Dunn County needs. We have a kind of an unusual situation in Dunn County in that there are some of the rural parts of Dunn County actually are fairly well served by some of the telephone cooperatives, because they, that's in their DNA, is serving the customer. And then, of course, Menominee itself is well serviced. But then there's this odd donut area that surrounds Menominee that doesn't seem to be serviced by anybody. Now, that has changed a little bit with some of the grant process, but it's kind of left an unusual footprint of internet broadband access in Dunn County. And there's limited resources what just the county itself and just this subcommittee can do. But we really thought it was like I said, a light bulb moment when we looked at hearing about these task force creating something that has buy-in from all the stakeholders in the community, just like you had on that last slide, so that it's not just the county that's organized with it, it's also the ISPs, the local business leaders, some of the organizations that you had listed, like I didn't even think about, with like senior organizations, that could all be part of that type of task force. That's kind of one of the reasons why I really wanted to have you come speak to this committee to kind of outline some of those ideas and even provide some idea on, okay, how do we initially create something like that? What would be our steps and creating such a task force? And I don't know if any of the other supervisors have any thoughts on that, but that's kind of where we are at this point. I must have done a good job of summing it up because no one else is volunteering anything else. So
usually, and thank you for that. Usually in most counties, this becomes the most important thing, and some of them are from an economic development perspective. Some of them are spending all of their ARPA money. Forest County, for example, all $1.3 million that they received, as well as many of the townships putting in their funds for it as well. But it addresses how significant this has become as an issue. So I know our time is limited here, and as you have questions, I'd be delighted to meet with the group or whatever group you choose within Dunn County, and including being there in person. And I appreciate that. I can leave in a few minutes here with my wife a mile and a half away for Valentine's Day. But at any rate, whatever questions you choose and give and take back and forth. But hopefully we're a good source of information and a good resource, and very actively involved in what is going on. That one link that I showed you, and I can certainly send you the report from the governor's task force on broadband, which was complete, the 2022 version. And that committee continues to meet once a month. And at the same time, I'm on the something called the Wisconsin Digital Equity and Inclusion Stakeholders Group, which is also run by the state broadband director, Alyssa Kenny. And we had that meeting just this morning or whatever. So we continue to go forth. But right now, with the phenomenal funding stream that's coming down from the federal government, many people have been waiting for this for years. So my recommendation is certainly don't miss it. With that, just the money is starting to flow, and depending on what your priorities are, as you mentioned, the ring around the city of Menominee, perhaps, that's quite common, and it's certainly common right here. The ring around Eagle River had and the ring around Crandon, if you will, to the east of here. But try to capitalize on this moment to capture that federal money if you can.
And Supervisor Vogel, you have a question.
Thank you. So I was curious, is all of this funding going to come through the PSC grants?
Quite a bit of it is coming through whether all of it, I'm not certain, but a lot of it, and it shakes out in they've got several different grants. And as I mentioned that most of these for infrastructure are due right now on March 1st. So we're talking 2 weeks away. That is an awfully short turnaround time. Not impossible, but you'd have to prioritize.
We're going to actually be voting on that tonight. So.
Oh, okay.
So, yes.
Okay. So that's and then if you do, I've helped certainly contributed significant portions of several grants and urged other counties to Forest County got a $1.9 million grant 2 years ago. And for that small county of 9,000 population, that was certainly one of the largest grants they'd ever received. And working with them. And so that grant has now essentially been deployed with some fiber and some towers. Actually, you don't always want this, but 17 towers were deployed for wireless within the county. But they got a second grant where those now that those towers have been deployed, they didn't have to put up anymore. The second grant where 110 miles of fiber optic will be deployed. So that helps. All of those help quite a bit as we connect more and more people here.
Supervisor Quinn. I saw your finger.
I know. Okay. So I'm stuck now.
You're stuck now.
So so far, almost all of we did have done a lot of research in the county originally, maybe I don't know, 5 to 7 or 8 years ago, and our staff did a great job of putting together a report. Unfortunately, we haven't had the staff support to actually move beyond that. And so most of our work has been done kind of through relationships with the ISPs. And like Jim said, we have some ISPs who've done and are doing a pretty good job of getting grants. We're going to be acting on several of those requests tonight. But so access has been the biggest thing we've worked on. And it's been frustrating because while the ISPs have been, and mostly through the ISPs, and while they have been interested in and respectful of asking for our support, I think what we found is that there is a kind of a reluctance on their part to participate in any kind of a joint planning in terms of who's got what territory, where does something start and stop. I'm wondering what your experience has been where you've set up, organizational structures, community-wide structures. Have those structures been able to bring the ISPs to the table and talk about things like who services where?
Well, I forgot your first name. Tom. Yeah, thank you, Tom. Tom, the experience is mixed in each county. So I'm punting a little bit, but I'm going to get more succinct here. Certainly, the ISPs are out to make a profit. And when I say little, I mean population-wise, Forest County, 9,000 people. And yet it's big enough. It's almost the size of Rhode Island, if you will, with a very rural area. The bigger ISPs have a presence. The CenturyLinks, which is now changing its name to Brightspeed. Charter Spectrum certainly has a presence, and maybe not in that county, but Comcast is deploying like crazy right now and has a presence throughout the state. Those are the bigger ones. And they're interested in serving the areas where they're going to get the most profit. There's no question about it. Sometimes I've had more success reaching out to the smaller ISPs who are more at the local level. In the Northwoods, we utilized Northwoods Connect, which is now, I'm sorry to say, been bought out. Well, it's been bought out by a larger ISP, but one that's certainly trying to serve the whole of Bug Tussle, which has probably approached you. I'm not sure. You tell me, but Bug Tussle. And then I had two small ones here in Eagle River. We were fortunate enough to have one called SonicNet, which used to be wireless only and now is a hybrid company, meaning it is both wireless and fiber, and ChoiceTel, which is also both wireless and fiber. Because they live here locally, they're almost have a more dedicated viewpoint in some cases of serving the local community and leaving no stone unturned, if you will. So there's been that experience, and it's worked out. It has worked out well in our relationships. That having been said, the community of Boulder Junction, which is just a town, the town of Boulder Junction in western Vilas County, year-round population about 550 approximately, but also a heavy seasonal tourist population in the summer, built a relationship with CenturyLink. And when Boulder applied for grants to the tune of in the vicinity of $2 to $2.5 million, CenturyLink was able to contribute some money toward their grant. and no small amount. I can't remember the amount off the top of my head, but it was no small amount. So there has been some success in working with and building a relationship and inviting ISPs to the table. I hope that addressed your question to some degree.
In part, at least, yeah. Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, yeah, I mean, I think we have a good relationship with the local ISPs. The larger ones, as noted in the letter today, can be problematic. But even they have been. It's not a big deal so far, but have been somewhat reluctant to work to share information about or planning about service areas and stuff like that. But we're going to be talking about applying for a BEAD grant, I think, right?
Sure. BEAD, broadband equity access and deployment is a thing. Sure.
In our area that we've been offered by the regional planning Momentum West regional economic development entity. They offered to serve as a sort of facilitating group for those grants. So I think it's very likely we'll get that grant and we'll have some resources to use for planning. I mean, it would be great to have your help in sort of thinking about how we deploy those when we get down to it.
I am delighted to help as much as I can with that, and I'm glad that you're on board with that. And I think in this case, Momentum West, indeed. And there's is it Chris Strait over there?
Right, regional planning.
And it seems to be I don't know Chris well, but seems to be certainly on the ball and have a lot of knowledge about the broadband and working with and the funding for it and working with the state, everything. So glad to hear that you're moving forward with that.
Chris, maybe you could share that PowerPoint with me via email, and then I can share it with the rest of the committee, because there's a lot of good information in that, and then they can kind of get into it and absorb it a little bit more. Anybody else have any questions for Chris so that he can head out with his wife for Valentine's Day, maybe head down the road to Three Lakes and go to the winery or something? I don't know.
Well, that may be. Fortunately, we have plans to go to Wausau tomorrow that were made some time ago. So but it's a pleasure. Thanks.
I appreciate it, Chris, and thanks for the information. And we'll definitely be in touch.
Thank you for inviting me here. And Jim, I'm going to send you you and copy Addison the PowerPoint that I just shared with you. So,
excellent.
Okay. So everybody, since best wishes, happy Valentine's.
Thank you, Chris.
So bye-bye.
All right, we'll quickly move on, and we can just get a really short, if you want to, quick communications update from you, Chris, if you want.
You have a written report, pretty self-explanatory, tell you what we've been up to in the last month. The only thing that I did want to bring forward, because it's pretty new development, is the number 8 on that written report. Chief Atkinson from the Menominee PD had applied or had received a large federal COSIP grant. It's related to opioid funding. And as a part of that, he had written in purchase of Qualtrics, which is a surveying system. It's actually a, what do they call it? Something experience, not person experience, but yeah, I don't know. It's got a, but like basically you would be measuring like your employee experience or your consumer experience, or in this case, our residents and or employees experience. So like the university system uses Qualtrics for all of its research and etc. The product itself is about, for the package that the city was able to purchase, is about $13,000 a year. And the chief was able to utilize that funding and from the COSIP grant for 3-year purchase of Qualtrics, and they're going to share it with us for free.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah. So we will have some ability to do much more targeted kind of surveying, polling, questioning out internally and externally. So
nice.
So we're going to send Dan Dunbar to Salt Lake City in early March to learn some more about all of that. The conference registration paid for by the project, but we'll have to fund his travel costs. So, but pretty good bang for our buck.
All right, sounds good. Anything else from communications? Any questions about communications at all?
So, Chris, I was happy to see that you had asked Doug to look into the Red Cedar Watershed Conference. I appreciate that. Does he need any more information, do you know, or is it?
He has been in communication with Stout because that's his old stomping grounds. So working with whoever at Stout, and they're actually looking at issuing a joint press release.
Great. Thanks a lot. Appreciate that.
All right. Then we are going to move on to consideration of actions to be taken by our committee. And I believe we already took action on the education staffing model for the agriculture educator. So we're going to move on to extensions 2022 budget carry forward request. And was that also related to this, or was that something else? Okay.
So the budget carry forward request is for the leave balance payout for your support specialist who left at the end of the year. And since that last day was December 30th, that payout did end up hopping over to the 2023 budget. So we are just requesting to carry forward the funds of the 8109.68 that was paid out so that it is then still last year's funds, since it was not budgeted for with the 23 budget.
And do I have a motion to? And Larry seconds it. Is there any more discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, passes. Okay. Moving on to the rural tourism website budget carry forward request. I don't know if there's do we have documentation in here? I don't think we do.
It was on the same staff report as the extension carry forward.
Okay.
Not a whole lot of information.
Well, essentially it's basically since the site has not been completely finished yet, we want to carry the funds forward so that it can get, when it is finished, it will be paid for out of those original funds that were allocated. Is there a motion to approve that?
I make that motion. Money well spent.
And any second? Any more discussion? If not, all in favor of voting that, moving that carry forward request forward, say aye.
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 None opposed, so that passes. Next is a resolution authorizing grants from ARPA funds for qualifying broadband projects. And Chris, I think you can probably speak to this. So you have the floor.
All right. So last year, in March, well, actually in February, and then you took action in March as CRT in allocating the funding. But in February, the county board approved allocating up to $100,000 of ARPA funding to the three ISPs who were applying at that point in time, had applied for and were for broadband expansion, rural broadband expansion grants through the PSC. Only 2 of those projects were funded for 24/7 telecom in the town of Menominee and the town of Dunn. So now that monies that was available last year was essentially kind of reconfigured. Whatever wasn't spent, it's a little over $14 million, I believe, that's in this funding cycle. So it's not going to go terribly far. But the 3 telecom companies are all interested or all working on submitting grant requests for this year as well. And those are due here in a couple of weeks. I think Chris today said March 1st, but I think they said February 23rd. So anyway, soon. So last year, the approval, so essentially from last year's money, just under $40,000 has been spent, although we haven't spent it yet because the projects haven't commenced with 24/7. So there's about 160,000 and a little bit extra left. There's about 60,000 left. And what I'm proposing is that we allocate another $100,000 this year for those projects. The PSC looks more favorably when there's larger match money. Their costs are increasing dramatically, like everything else. In terms of putting those projects together, it's unlikely that they will all be funded, but the money would then be available to them. And the proposal would be, so our ARPA money, we're just starting to move some of it out now to fund some of the highway projects that occurred in 2022. But up until now, we've been sitting on the entire $8.6 million, 8.6 or $8.8 million. Right now, it is earning about a little over 4% interest. And so it's earning about $30,000 a month of interest, which is a nice benefit. And so Beata and I did some number crunching a week or so ago and believe that it would be very low risk. There's no indication that those interest rates are going to change anytime in the next few months, in which time it would take for us to accumulate an additional $100,000 to be able to fund additional broadband. So the resolution is the request to allocate the additional $100,000, and then the money from last year's already been allocated.
Does that make sense to everybody? Mm-hmm. Supervisor Vogel has a question or comment.
Thank you. So should the amount we're asking for be 140 or 160?
The amount that you're asking for is actually, what does the resolution say? I guess would be really good. The amount for this year is actually just 100,000. Last year's was already allocated. It just hasn't been spent yet. And so,
some of it wasn't awarded, only 40 out of the original 100. So that left 60 left over.
So we're, because the resolution says 140,000. So that's
you're right. It is a misspeak. It would be up to, sorry, I'm looking for my resolution here. I don't know where it went. Thank you. Yes, it is. Yes, not to exceed. Yes, it would be 160,000.
So do we need to amend the resolution?
In reality, as I think it through, it probably could say 100,000 because the 100,000 from last year is already sitting out there approved to be spent from ARPA.
Yes.
So I think if someone would, if this were to move forward, it could move forward with an amendment to amend that amount to $100,000. Good question.
And I had one other question, because I was reading through the Word document, and I was a little confused about the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. So does that mean we've turned down money, or that LTD broadband did? And so I hate to think we're turning down money somewhere here because we have so many areas that need it.
Yes. So LTD was, as I understand it, LTD was granted, they call it RODOF funding, the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund funding in several states across the United States, and subsequently have either gotten into some trouble for not necessarily following through on what they committed to, or now have filed waivers essentially requesting to get out of the projects that they were approved for. So according to the local ISPs, there is little belief that any of the LTD projects in Dunn County will go forward.
Nice.
And Charter had a much smaller project, and that is in progress or been completed. I don't know where it's at exactly, but that was not at risk. So we didn't turn down the money, but the money was awarded to LTD through Rodolph, and that's not going to happen. Or it certainly doesn't appear to be going to happen.
Yeah, I think Chris is being too nice about it. I mean, it is a really good example of bad public policy, where we had a federal program that had no local input at all, and contracts were awarded to companies that did not have the capacity. And we should have known they don't have the capacity.
Well, that's the second time that's actually happened in Dunn County, because it happened with CenturyLink getting awarded some build out south of Elk Mound, and they just got it so they could lock it up and not build.
And then the worst example of it I've heard in Minnesota, there was a same kind of situation, different company with a similar kind of company. And they were awarded a grant in rural Minnesota. And then subsequently, Minnesota passed a similar program to Wisconsin. And the ISPs in the area applied for that funding, not the big charter company, and they were denied because that area had already been covered by a grant awarded to a company that had no capacity to provide it's just really frustrating when there's so much need and it gets managed that way.
So for this resolution, do we need to first make a motion? Do we have to amend it to say 100,000?
Well, we can add that into the motion, right?
I think you could do all in one. Make a motion to amend the proposed resolution to the amount of $100,000, and then forward it for approval.
So does somebody want to make a motion to amend this resolution to say $100,000 as opposed to 140, and then move it forward?
I will. Supervisor
Quinn, is there a second? Any more discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. And then finally, and I think this was a new addition to the agenda. So I think and this is a new grant program. So there's probably a lot of people who aren't familiar with the BEAD local planning grant program. So Chris, if you can kind of give us some background on it.
So I did include the letter from the PSC in Wisconsin. They essentially, this is a non-competitive grant. Counties decide to opt in for planning money. The federal government requires a 5-year action plan, and this is part of the process of putting together that plan, kind of building upon the local governments. And so this would be, if we said we wanted to get into the $1.5 million of BEAD planning funding, it would equate to, at least at this point in time, it looks like about $16,000 that would come to the county. It's $18,000 if you do it regionally, but I do have a letter from Momentum West saying it was questionable. There are issues between the 9 regional economic development agencies and the PSC, and it's not resolved at this point in time.
So that's interesting, because on the regional collaboration conference call last Friday, they were saying that people should it would be best if people would sign them on as the regional development organization.
Yeah, Steve John's message says, talks about the background and the money that would be available. 16,000 if each county applies directly with the PSC, 18,000 if they joined in a collaborative. And then he said, many questions still need to be resolved with the agreement between the state's 9 REDOs and the PSC. And in our case, the primary issue is administration of the funds via Momentum West. The 9 regional organizations are working with the PSC to resolve these concerns, but please note an option to funding through the region might not be an option, although working with the Regional Broadband Coalition and Momentum West Broadband Outreach Coordinator is still available.
So when was that, Chris?
This was 5 days ago.
Because on Friday he was saying differently. Anyway, you can make that, clarify that, and it's a matter. It's a pretty simple application.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the question on the table is, do we want to sign on? Again, it's a non-competitive grant. So essentially, I think if we say we're in, whatever the number of counties are that say that they're in, we'll then split the $1.5 million for planning.
I'd say that's a good idea.
So I move that we
he already beat you.
Okay.
Can you second it?
I'll second it. Yeah.
And any more discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And it passes.
And I think the only question that I have is, I would say that could stop here. Would that be your consensus as well? That
Yep.
this approval to apply for this BEAD planning grant could be a community resources and tourism.
Yeah, I think so. Between the administration and the committee.
Yep. Okay. Doesn't have to go on from here to additional board approval. The ARPA funding request will go to the executive committee at 6 o'clock on Wednesday evening.
Which is tomorrow. Or next week.
No, it's tomorrow.
It is tomorrow.
It is tomorrow.
It's crazy. I can't get the dates right this month at all.
Right. We'll go to executive committee at 6 o'clock tomorrow evening before the county board meeting at 7.
So that we can get it into the county board. Are there any announcements? Our next meeting date is Tuesday, March 14th, which is not a holiday, as far as I know. So until then, I want to say you are all my Valentines, and thanks for spending your Valentine's Day with me and all of us together. And this meeting's adjourned. Thank you.